Carlo, let me start with you because you were working with the label segment with Screen Europe. What kind of market are you addressing? I mean, talk in general terms. Is it a big market? Is it a small market? Is it an interesting market? Or how important is it to Screen? Oh, you have no sound.
You're on mute.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I was just testing to see if there were any lip readers amongst you. Yes, it's a very important fundamental market for Screen. It's a market that I've been involved in, since 2012. We'll come on to Steve a bit later on, for instance, but I've been involved with Screen been with Screen 21 years and very much been involved in the label market since sort of 2012. Since then, we've seen our market share grow, quite exponentially over that sort of period. We've 180 installations in a variety of different types of predominantly label makers. We do have other people that have invested in our technology for other sort of applications, for instance, but predominantly it is to the label marketplace. And, we see it as complementary technology to the production processes that a lot of our customers have already invested in.
If you look at it from a technology perspective, I mean, I know that you're addressing 3 different markets, like both the flexible, the commercial, and here labels. The print head and the technology behind it, is that similar, or is it very different from each market?
From Screen's perspective of coming into the packaging market, we are fundamentally behind inkjet technology. Okay, that is where a Screen have been moving quite dynamically in. There is variation, obviously, depending on the applications that we are printing. Screen is a manufacturer of very high tech, very reliable inkjet technologies, and what we do is we take the relevant head, we take the relevant ink, and we build the necessary technology to address that market segment and that type of application, for instance. So I know, earlier on you would have had one of my colleagues on talking about flexible packaging, for instance. We're employing water-based sort of technology, but very much the technology that I'm involved in is based around UV inkjet.
Okay. Steve, we're going to see a video we did with you last week. Thank you also to both you and to Kirsty for helping us out with that. That was wonderful. And in the video, you say something, as far as I remember, that you were looking into getting a digital screen printing capabilities. I mean, like the conventional screen methods, but in the digital format, right? With the things that you have now, because you are also said that you are very curious about new technology and things like that. If you look that from Screen and your perspective on Screen, how has that fit into having the curiosity for new things and at the same time also turn it into a business opportunity?
Yes, you're right. I always think it's quite confusing that the machine's called a screen and we were trying to find screen technology. So it would seem pretty obvious to do it that way. But yes, it was looking for the silk screen printing type of effect on a label, but in a digital process. And when we first got involved, it was best part of 5 years ago now. So digital was a major part of our business, but it was not limited as such. But it couldn't really give us anything different. And so being able to go with a UV inkjet version obviously gave us this different look. It gives the label a bit more of a feel. So in terms of how that's worked for us as a business, it just gave us that wider gamut of what we could do in the digital market. And I think this is the thing with digital. It's a bit like we've just been discussing about automation. Is you've got to keep looking out on the edges. You can't be, I know there's some businesses say you've got to have a nice tight narrow focus, but I think in the digital world now, you've got to keep looking out on the edges, because there's something popping up all the time, something new. They with like using the sort of DigiJet type technology, and that's all inkjet. So we know that at some point that's probably going to be integrated into the likes of screen, where you'll be able to do the digital varnishing, be able to do digital foiling. So all this will come forward in the future, and it'll be almost like a one-stop shop in a machine. So it's very important.
Final question here before, I think, Carlo, will we show the video from Baker first, or will we do the presentation first?
Let's do Steve Baker's video first, because that gives a nice sort of segue for me then to move into what I'd like to sort of present. That's
great. And that was not actually the question. The question was one thing that I actually like about, because what I have always liked about analog is that it has also the touch and feel of the operator or the company or preference. And if everything was digital and it was always standardized about everything, it could become a little bit boring. But what you say here, Steve, is what I like, is that you see a diversity just because the machines produce differently. I mean, of course, the customer wants the right color space and all those kind of things, but the touch and feel is still something that we, even when we choose different vendors, they have different approaches to how it looks and feels, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. And that's what you have to do. You've got to think, what does the client want? It's there still is the art and the craft side to it to a certain extent, of the right label for the right job produced on the right machine. So it's
well, I guess you want to be the first to go and present these to your customers with, great, look what else we can do. So I mean, you're getting that to the brand as quick as possible.
Well, we're a trade supplier, so what it helps with us is we're able to make these new technologies available to the trade, which they may be looking to invest in different areas at certain times, or whatever it might be. But it enables us to get it out to those guys, for them obviously to get it out to the brands and out to their clients. Yeah.
Let's turn off the cameras and microphones and watch the film, and then we can take it from there, right? Oh, you did it this time. Fantastic.
We're primarily a self-adhesive label manufacturer, but we also have a material supply company, and we recently have started up a backpack, which is a flexible packaging printing company. Our business is trade label supply. We figured out very early on that our skill lays in the production side of things rather than in the sales side. We also found that there was a gap in the market where we were quite happy to invest in new equipment. We like new equipment. We like the excitement of the developments that go on in the industry. And of course, the advantage is we don't have a lot of expensive salespeople out there with their expense accounts and their vehicles. So that helps as well to be able to keep prices right and keep us competitive. We initially sort of try and think, where is there a need? So it's normally something that's causing us if it's causing us a pain point, then it's more than likely it's going to be the same thing for everybody out there. We don't want new technologies just for new technology's sake. It's got to be, is this commercially viable? So is this going to be something that gives us a decent return? Is this going to be something that our clients will want, or is it a bit of a gimmick? It's keeping your eyes open and being very aware of what's out there on the market, and just plucking out the right things. Really, that's sort of the skill, I think. More people were investing in HPs at that time, so if I'm going out to trade people and saying I've invested in another HP, it's like, well, that's great, but what does it give us? We were looking at Inkjet because what we wanted to achieve was digital screen printing, because that opens up a different market segment. You know, the HP is very good, but at that time particularly, there were some weaknesses in the whites, the strength of the colors, the brightness, and also that look and feel of a label. So if it was a healthcare label going on to shampoo, something like that, clients like to have that screen print finish. So we were looking at first a digital press that would give us something different that we could go to our existing digital people with, rather than just saying, you know, we've got more capacity. Yes, it did. There's been some challenges along the way, because again, being an early adopter of equipment, you do have those challenges. Everybody's sort of learning and finding their way in the market. With us, it's more, it helps us to secure the accounts, you know, because if you're working with trade, if they have a need for something, if you can't supply it, they've still got that need. They're not going to compromise and say, oh, well, that's okay. If that's the best you can do, then we'll accept it. It's the fact that, you know, they will find somebody else to do it. So has it made us money? Well, any press that comes in, you know, obviously makes us money. Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are. So it's so that continues. But I think the fact that, you know, we then bought a second one tells you whether we were happy with it or not. So Screen have obviously made a lot of changes since we purchased our first one, but it is in proper, thought out, timed developments, you know, so they make sure that by the time a product comes to market, it's already got those, you know, all the best stuff is in it. So, you know, you're not going to keep having different versions of it coming out or feel that you've been superseded, you know, 3 months down the line. So, you know. I think they play an important role. You know, looking into the hybrid presses that are being developed now, that's more than likely at some point in the future that will be the route that we will possibly go down, and we will 100% be talking to Screen. I'm not saying that that's a given, you know, because you know, when it comes to the time, we will still make the right decision on what's happening, and there are advances. But I like the fact that, you know, the label presses, in one sense, it's not their be-all and end-all of business. You know, they're a very big manufacturer, you know, in other markets. So you know that they're a long-term business, and they've got great foundation, and they've got a good ethos. And, you know, we get a very good response, you know, if ever there is a problem. But, you know, touch wood, I can say, you know, we have very few problems. You know, the engineers don't really tend to come here very often. Even down to the fact that our main operator, he's only 22, and he comes in 6 o'clock in the morning, knocks the work out straight. You know, he's up and he's running, and the work just churns and churns and churns. You know, he's one of those guys that just wants to be busy, and he's got the machine that keeps him, you know, keeps it going. So it's as a boss, that's what you want, isn't it? You just want to see your machines running. You know, you as we always say here, you're only earning if the presses are turning. So it's you know, that's what we want. So, and Screen gives us that. So yeah, very impressed.
Thank you, Steve. That was a wonderful film. And I mean, you and I did the interview, and then your people did everything else, and then we just mixed all of it together, right?
Brilliant. It's all down to Kirsty.
Can we claim your operator? Just, I mean, gosh, what an attitude, hey?
Yeah.
We claim him.
Yeah. Well, if we could automate him, it'd be get another one and another one. So brilliant. Yeah.
So people are already starting to ask questions, but dear audience, please hang on. I think that some of the questions may be answered during Carlos' presentation right now, and I'm quite certain that both Steve and Carlo will be happy to answer all the questions they possibly can after the presentation. So, Carlo, you're going to share your screen. Are you comfortable with that?
Oh, definitely. So what I'd like to do is if I can take sort of control of the screen. So
Please do so.
Hopefully, why don't you tell me if okay. So do you see a...
No, we don't see anything yet. You have to click on the share screen, turn screen share on just next to the microphone in the top of the screen. You see the green dots we have. You turned off the video camera and the microphone, and in the top of that.
Yeah, I can see that. So I've clicked. Okay, so let me click.
Yeah, if you click that, and you can select the app window, and then you basically can see your PowerPoint or whatever program you're using.
I'm clicking on that. So here's the first technical problem. Nothing's happening.
Are you using a Mac or PC?
I'm using a Mac.
You're using a Mac. Okay. What I think we will try to do, because the problem was it was too big for uploading here, but I did download it. So let me just see if I can find it. You remember the title of it was probably something screen.
Is anything broadcasting now?
Check on that. No.
Okay,
so what happens when you click on it? Because when you click on it, you can see it says your entire screen.
It says entire screen. So I've got a choice of two screens, which I can sort of choose. I click share.
Yeah. Then you should move to that screen, I think. Otherwise, do something else. Click on that screen share, and then you see next to the entire screen, you see there's an app window.
Yeah, I've tried that as well. So I can see the application window. I've clicked the
and nothing happens.
Application and nothing happens. Yes.
Okay. What is the name of your presentation? The title of the file? Because then I can just search for it.
It was well. First of all, it's the movie, so it's the.
Okay, let's play the movie, and then you and I will figure that out.
Okay, fine.
Okay, yeah. Okay, Carlo, did you manage to figure out what the problem was with your screen sharing?
No, it just doesn't. For some reason, it just doesn't seem to want to broadcast. Listen, it's not a big sort of problem, Morten.
I can help you a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't have the right fonts, but then you can just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
So now we at least have something to watch, right?
Yeah. Well, listen. No, what I was going to do was I was actually going to speak over that particular movie and stop and start at particular sort of points, for instance. But it's not a big sort of issue, because we're really, the purpose of this particular sort of session is to talk about how inkjet label sort of production is sort of sitting amongst toner and Flexo. We heard from Steve earlier on saying that one of his sort of instrumental decisions for buying it was to actually offer a different look and a feel compared to what he was also producing with his existing sort of technology. We have obviously other people who bought it for those sort of particular reasons, but a lot of people have bought this machine because they've been very successful with their existing sort of toners, and they've really sort of hit a plateau when it comes to being able to offer that sort of same quick turnaround sort of service, being able to adapt to the customer and the brand owner sort of needs for the new variety of products that they want to bring to market sort of quickly and dynamically without having to hold sort of stock, for instance. Yeah. And the whole ethos behind this sort of technology is productivity. Now, from that video, rather than really it being sort of a plug sort of for screen and the latest sort of technology, and obviously I'd like to touch upon some of the the more sort of salient sort of points of some of the new things that we've introduced. Fundamentally, what I want to get across is that the ink technology employed, I see it as being, as well as being industrial and compact and easy to use, I describe it as the simplest of label production processes. In essence, we unwind, we jet directly onto the substrate, and then we rewind again. You could see from that particular solution, although we can actually configure it into in its simplest forms standalone, we can do it sort of inline, nearline, and even as Steve sort of intimated, we've also got this technology running in hybrid configurations. In its simplest form, the web path is very short, it minimizes substrate waste, we use the minimum of consumable items, saving cost, but importantly time, and there is minimal setup and maintenance required. We saw from Steve's video, he's got a young lad on there, which is not necessarily unique to Steve. We see people within other businesses being able to employ people of all different sort of skill sets on this sort of technology, because it is very it's very robust. I've just said it's simple label printing systems, but there is of course a lot of intelligent technology that we employ both in hardware and software. And often overlooked also is the ink that we use, with UV Inkjet as well. So the key features I'd like to emphasize is simplicity of use and maximum uptime, leading to high, productivity. So that sort of, the general sort of theme of the video we've actually just sort of seen, for instance. What you could do for me is on your slides selection there, if I tell you which slide to sort of...
If you give me a few seconds, then I will have a semi-okay solution, because I'm basically creating a PDF, uploading it, so that should be doable. So if you just give me a second.
So Carla, I'll ask a question in the meantime, because where is the drying side, the substrate flexibility, where does that come into it? Or either one of you, I guess, because, from a manufacturer side and from a customer side, is there a wide range of flexible substrates?
Well, this is for label, production. And one of the nice things about the UV Inkjet, particularly if you have existing Flexo and HP stuff technology, is that in effect we can use exactly the same type of substrates.
Oh, brilliant!
That we're so it's very easy to you can either use the technology to offer something different, Alternatively, you can use the technology to use it for the most efficient way of producing something. We can color manage the systems, whether it be produced on a Flexo, produced on the Inkjet, or produced on the on a toner device, for instance. So that, in certain circumstances, the jobs being produced can be interchangeable. So and with drying, we're using UV. So in effect, as soon as we see the print coming out onto the inspection table, it's ready to transfer across straight onto the finishing. I'll tell a quick sort of story here.
Yeah, hang on a second, Carlo. Now I have got the slides up and running here, so you can see there's a previous and next. So now you can slide through the presentation anyway.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is tell a quick sort of story, because Steve Baker and Baker Labels have been very instrumental with Screen and producing collateral for us, and and also making their equipment available for customers to come and visit. We once had a customer come, the operator was ready, prepared to go. At the opportune time of actually asking the operator to press the go button to start printing, he asked Steve a question which made him go to another part of the factory. He'd only been gone about sort of 2 minutes. By the time he'd come back, the operator had printed the job, it had dried, he'd taken it off the back of the spindle, and he'd already loaded it onto the finishing equipment. So he'd missed all that sort of particular stage of things, because that's how quick and efficient the system is. So hopefully now you'll see a little bit inside the sort of inside the machine. It is a very simple technology. In effect, what we have sort of a skate system where the media passes underneath the inkjet modules. Now, in the machine you've just seen in the current movie that we showed earlier on, we actually have we're using 6 colors plus a white inkjet module inside. So what we do is we print a white, we use UV LED curing to, in effect, sort of fix it but not fully cure the ink, so that prevents it sort of bleeding as it processes underneath the next sort of heads. In a simpler configuration, most of our customers have CMYK, but recently we've introduced orange and blue ink, which not only further extend the color gamut that is actually being able to achieve from what is in a sense a very wide color gamut anyway, just using 4 color, and but also by utilizing the orange and blue, we're seeing significant ink savings from not just from jobs that have Pantones in them, but also jobs that are fundamentally 4 color. We're using intelligent color management to utilize the best combination of inks to get the best sort of result inside there, for instance. One of the other things with Inkjet is it's very versatile, it's very flexible. I can remember from the first days of when we first got in talking with Steve Baker. Our machine was just newly released, it was 4 color only. Since then, we've introduced single speed, high opacity, white, variable data printing. I mentioned before, going inline, nearline, in hybrid configurations. The machine is industry 4 compatible. We talk with MIS systems capable of transmitting JDF and JMF information back from the machine into the MIS system. And of course, we've mentioned orange and blue, but there's other ink developments that we're looking at doing. With the current technology that we've got, as you can see from this presentation, you'll see that we actually have a little blank space to the left of the machine for future inkjet sort of modules, for instance. It's very easy to employ inkjet into a production process. It's a very sort of complicated way of actually getting an ink onto the substrate. And just to finish off on this particular sort of slide, as I mentioned previously, we're combining two types of curing to actually fix and make sure that there's full curing sort of taking place. Fundamentally, what I'd like to sort of talk about is productivity. Now, productivity comes from obviously the raw speed of the machine. So we're employing very industrial heads, very good high sort of speed, for instance, but also we are employing ways of actually making sure that we produce the highest quality without compromise. So we use high resolution rendering. We employ very high definition stochastic screening combined with different drop volumes dependent on where the droplet needs to drop inside the image to get the best sort of results. I'm just going to skip a few slides because there's quite a bit in there, but really what I'm looking to sort of talk about is the comparison between how Inkjet fits into a production process compared with, say, Toner and with Flexo. Now, one of the things you're seeing here is the automated cleaning sort of facility that we actually have within the Inkjet sort of technology. What we try and do is avoid and minimize the amount of maintenance, because obviously that overall allows the machine to be extremely sort of productive. The more the machine is available to print, of course, the more productive the
uptime.
Yeah. So here we are looking to ensure that we minimize the downtime, and we try and make sure that the system is fully automated. I mean, there's not a lot of maintenance on this particular sort of technology. There's some filters which need to be replaced on a weekly, 6 monthly, 12 monthly sort of period, and we try and allow the system to do the majority of the actual the cleaning sort of cycles to minimize the amount of interaction the operator has to do in keeping the machine up and running. What I will do is move on to some of the sort of findings that we find what makes it very sort of productive. One of the reasons people like Inkjet sort of technology is because we can produce a job today, in the afternoon, tomorrow, next week, in 6 months' time, and be very much assured that they can reproduce exactly the same color fidelity that they produced on the first day that they actually printed that sort of job. As I mentioned previously, it's a very simple technology. We're printing directly onto the substrate, so there's no blankets, there's no plates. So it's a very easy sort of system for an operator to reproduce sort of work, which again builds on that productivity sort of message that Inkjet really allows a business to sort of surge ahead a little bit with. If we do some comparisons with, just bear with me a second. What I'd like to focus on a little bit is how putting Inkjet into a production environment, we can benefit from improved productivity. So here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so job comparison. So what a lot of people are very fearful of when they make the investment in Inkjet is basically the ink sort of cost. So one of the things this slide, unfortunately, I think some of the data hasn't sort of transferred sort of across, is this is showing the cost of producing using Inkjet technology compared to Toner, compared to sort of Flexo, for instance. So typically this is a job of about 1,500, linear meters, which is becoming very much a typical sort of, run length. Now, obviously, the substrate, cost is the biggest cost of sort of production, which is the purple color that you see at the bottom. With Inkjet, we minimize the amount of waste. There's very little sort of setup. The comparison here is done on a per job sort of basis, for instance. But one of the things that you can do with digital technology is actually, if you're printing on similar substrate, for instance, you can gang jobs together so that you maximize the media. You're not having to stop and set up, for instance. So you can actually, even sort of reduce the amount of, wastage by, efficiently, ganging jobs together, for instance. Now, although the ink, which is the blue part of the presentation here, is significantly cheaper on the Flexo, one of the big components of the cost on the Flexo is the consumables employed, so things like plates. So that's the yellow part of the graph you actually see here, for instance. So the costs are very much in favor of Inkjet a little bit, for instance. But what's very important, obviously, is the amount of work. Although the costs, look very sort of similar there, for instance, what you get with, Inkjet is the ability to produce a lot more work on a daily sort of shift, for instance. So what you can do, in effect, is if you actually have 3 types of technology already within your business, you can actually improve and make available more capacity on the other technologies by bringing across, in effect, what are the relevant sort of sweet spots for those particular machines. Now, unfortunately, on here, the PDF has not come across, too well on there, for instance. But what the message, I'd like to do is, if we compare Toner, Inkjet, and sort of Flexo, one of the questions we always sort of get asked is, where do you see the sort of, the crossover? There is a crossover from a cost sort of, perspective, where the cost of the ink, makes it sort of, prohibitive on an Inkjet, and on a Toner, it's the time it takes to print the longer run lengths, for instance, that you decide to sort of move them around the different types of sort of technology, for instance. So although here, with the Toner job here, we've put a typical run length of 500. We're looking at 2,000 meters with the Inkjet and 10,000 meters sort of plus on the Flexo, for instance. Of course, you've got latitude coming, in other sort of directions. So the Toner, for instance, can quite easily go up to 1,000 meters, whereas, the Inkjet can quite easily print 1 or go up as far as sort of 5,000 sort of, meters, where the cost, for instance, might then sort of say, right, we need to go to, printing on sort of Flexo, for instance. But of course, what the Inkjet can give you is not necessarily the cost, but also the fact that if you need to get something out of the door sort of quickly, or you need to move because there's a special sort of campaign, for instance, the Inkjet will give you the versatility of being able to print longer run lengths to fulfill that particular customer's needs and requirements. Anyway, listen, I think I've spoken for quite a while there, for instance. So I'm happy to let somebody else have some input.
Well, maybe we should get to the questions, because there were a few, and I think we take them one by one. So there was Rib Evans. Have you seen any trending with commercial printers entering the short run label market, and how will they fit in?
This is, sorry, shall I take this one? Yeah. I know this is something that is being pushed at the moment by some of the machine manufacturers to encourage commercial printers to get involved with labels. I think it's just purely because the commercial market in a lot of sectors is struggling. There's overcapacity in the market, and there's you know, a lot of the advantages that we're seeing with technology, you know, commercial printers have had that for quite some time, so there isn't any real gains to be had anywhere. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. As a label printer, I'd sooner, you know, not too many commercial printers get too involved. My biggest concern is fully understanding the market, because it's not just a case of saying, right, well, that's what my material cost is, that's what my labor cost is, and yeah, there's my markup on it, and that's it. There's a lot of technical side that goes into making a label, especially when, you know, you have to look at what is happening with the label after you've actually produced it and dispatched it. It's still got to be applied. You know, we're only one step in the process. We're not the final product. You know, if you're producing leaflets, booklets, standard sort of commercial print, you're producing a final product. We're producing an item that has to be used in somebody else's process. And so, it has to be able to be applied properly. There's lots of technicalities in that. You know, the die cutting, die strike and everything like that has to be 100%. Otherwise, it won't apply properly. There's a whole list of various things. So it's like any time,
though, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, you want to be a specialist in your field. So, I mean, I think it's two totally different businesses. So.
They are different, but a straight answer to the question is yes. There's a lot more interest in commercial printers getting involved with labels.
I'd concur with Steve's answer. I think the printing part is fairly sort of simple, for instance, but I think it's the expertise, it's the know-how, particularly in finishing, which can be very complicated. And that's where I think a lot of the commercial printers don't have the sort of expertise. I mean, we've had a couple of of customers that have made that sort of transition to sort of label, but it was because there was sort of overlaps with the type of work that they were doing. So they might have been producing sheet-fed wet glue labels, for instance, and their customers had asked them, well, look, you do all this for us, could you also supply to the self-adhesive as well, for instance? But in the norm, I don't think, although from my perspective, I would love obviously to have a much larger sort of a base to go after, for instance. There are sort of skill sets which I think people like Steve Baker are best sort of suited for providing for their customers.
Oh, and we're trade, so just send it to us.
Exactly.
Jean, there are more questions.
There are. So Tace is asking Steve Baker, did he only compare Screen as the main competitor for HP Indigo?
No, at the time we had a look around quite a few. Well, I say quite a few. There weren't as many as there are now, but yes, we looked at Durst, we looked at Domino as being the two main. The Dantex wasn't sort of up and running at that particular time. Trying to think which other ones we looked at. I know it definitely came down to it being between Screen, Durst, and Domino, and. In fairness, there wasn't a huge amount to choose at that particular time, but we did have, I think we had about 12 test jobs that we wanted to run, and we knew that they were particularly difficult jobs to run because we was having problems with them on the HP technology. So it was quite a severe test, and in fairness, Screen at the time came out best. But we are talking. We're talking 5-6 years ago. The technology has moved on leaps and bounds since then. There's. I know Carla won't mind me saying it, but there's plenty of competition out there, and the competition is good. So it's we all need good competition.
I mean, competition pushes the boundaries all the time, right? Absolutely. So that is the benefit for the customers, right? So Andrew Mantell is also asking, Steve, do you find there is a significant ink saving on your SIA presses compared to your older press?
I haven't got an SIA press. I've got the low migration press is the second one that we've got. no, there is in terms of that there isn't. But we haven't got that color combination. We've got the orange in the other press. But in fairness, we don't really use that very often because we want to be able to swap from one press to the other. So we don't want to have sort of specific jobs that can only go down one machine. So we're probably not the best judge of that in terms of saying if there's a saving.
I think it's probably because Carlos showed a side video, right? So
yeah,
maybe that could be the reason.
So Carlo, one of your own, Buey, hi Buey, Burke asked Steve, first of all, thanks for supporting the session and sharing your experience. The session is living with Inkjet. I wonder if you could comment on whether Inkjet is a robust technology. For example, some people might believe that all Inkjet devices are worn out and degraded after 3 to 4 years. Do you see the device performing consistently well, even the older devices after many years?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, our old press, as we like to call it, it's 5 years, and you think 5 years in the digital world is a long time. We've got HPs that are that age as well, and I think that we've now hit that point. Any digital press that somebody's buying now from an established provider, it will still be running in 10 years time. It might be superseded technology wise, but the press itself will still be able to do what it's doing today. And I mean, as the future technology, I mean, Inkjet, I'll be very surprised if that doesn't become the proper market lead. Well, it's only really got it's got 2 different types of competition, but there's far more providers of the Inkjet technology, and Inkjet is more scalable. You can go wider with it, you can go faster with it. It's a simple matter of just adding a few more heads, really, isn't it? It's nothing too complicated. But equally, it's what else you can do with it. Being able to, I know there's issues with laying down metallics at the moment, but that will be overcome. There'll be better, the inks will be better refined, they'll have smaller particles, and you'll be able to do that. I mean, being able to inkjet circuit boards, items like this, you can do this now, albeit you can't do it on a roll press, but it still is the inkjet technology. Being able to do the cold foil with inkjet, doing raised varnish with inkjet. They might be different machines, but fundamentally it's that same technology. So it shows it's going to be there, and it's going to be it's definitely going to be there for a long time. It's not going to disappear. I mean, it literally is as there's more products out there, the ink prices will start to come down. I mean, they're already seeing some sort of competitiveness in the market. So, and as that does come down, and the speeds go up, once the presses are up around the 100 meters a minute, and they've got comparable ink prices, well, you've got to go some to beat that on a conventional press. So the run lengths will increase and increase. I mean, we definitely take work from conventional and put it through the inkjet, because
in that relation, Henrik Christiansen, he is asking, did the previous slide, and I think he was sneaking into your fast forward, Carlo, because he asked, did that slide say that inkjet inks are five times more expensive than Flexo inks?
Yeah, I mean, in reality,
it's fast eyes, right?
Yeah,
they are sort of more expensive if you look at it on a sort of per job basis. But one of the things, I don't know if you noticed or saw during the movie, was that we supply the ink in 4-liter containers, and we pour the ink completely to the machine. So eventually the ink actually ends up on the substrate, or we use it for occasionally cleaning the heads, for instance. Whereas with Flexo ink, there's a lot of ink wastage from which people don't take into account. You can look at on a shelf, you'll see lots of half cans of Flexo ink being sort of stored. There's a lot of ink that is sort of wasted during the cleanup stages, the setting up sort of stages, for instance. So on a sort of individual, per sort of job basis, for instance, Yes, currently at the moment, inkjet ink is more expensive. It's a more technical ink. We can't use the same components that go into conventional Flexo ink. Steve mentioned, the fact that, we've got to jet, ink through tiny sort of, nozzles, for instance. So, from a Flexo press where you have an ingredients list this big, down to UV inkjet, for instance, it's that big. And one of the things which I didn't really, in this particular sort of session, sort of talk about is one of the other things that Screen actually offers, and Steve has one of these machines, is low migration, where the rest, it comes down even sort of further, for instance. But we've seen, and with the adoption of inkjet sort of technology, for instance, it's scale. And economies of scale. I prior to being involved with inkjet with Screen, I was very much involved in computers to plate sort of technology. And when the first sort of digital plates came out, the cost of plates compared to conventional were miles apart. But now, for a start, digital has probably replaced completely anybody producing anything sort of analog, for instance. And inkjet is going very much that way, for instance. And in time,
but sorry to interrupt, but that has also something to do with the business models, because basically, if the machines were way more expensive and the business model were different, then also ink prices could be affected. So there's a competitiveness both to the operational cost as well as the acquisition cost, right?
Ink, though, also is only one component in it. If you're talking about the cost of the job, if you're able to set that up in 10 meters as opposed to maybe 250 meters on a Flexo, and I know, Flexo's got short run pass, and that's the beauty. Inkjet and digital has helped to drive the evolution of the latest Flexos, but even so, there still is on the vast majority, there's a lot more wastage in terms of the setup on it. So if you take that into account, you take into account, how many labels have got 100% ink coverage, average that out as well. The vast majority are down into the sort of the less than 50%. So it's what is the ink cost per label in comparison to that.
That is actually exactly what Thijs is saying, and we just have a few more moments, so we just rush to the last questions. Ralf Schlösser, who was one of our speakers yesterday and a specialist in inkjet and digital, asked, is using UV inks an issue with some customers' applications /application? I think that's a question to you, Steve.
We haven't seen it as any particular issue. We on our conventional we're UV Flexo, so it's using the same UV ink. We don't get particularly involved with any specific market area because we do a very, very broad band, so it's not as if we're just into sort of direct food or anything like that. So no, we haven't come across it. We got the low migration ink because low migration machine with a low migration ink because we thought that this was going to be a really important point a few years ago. And we don't really see it. We don't get asked about it too often. Nobody seems to be sort of particularly concerned with it. But then we're not doing these massive run links, which I think is where people are more concerned with it.
Session. So there's more questions. I'll take the next.
Yeah. Okay. I just I have from my colleague Kim Rikin Sustman. He's asking, what about the optical differences in printing between Inkjet, Toner, and Flexo? Since Steve, you have everything, is there something that is a concern?
Where you say the optical differences, in terms of what, just the way that it actually looks, or the color, or there isn't. We haven't come across any concern about it. It's about using the right machine and the right technology for producing the job that the client wants. We had like a session with the Movent 2 sessions ago, and one of the questions was that because they were
advocating that when you go short runs up to medium run, then you use digital, and then you move to flexo when you have like long runs.
Yeah.
And also that sometimes if you come in with a job where you say that now you need 500 meters and tomorrow you may need 10,000 meters, whatever, right? So I think that sometimes the questions is also when you have job changes in different technologies and different times, can you then color match?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Okay.
We color match all the presses. We can run. There's a difference in maybe the look between some of the technologies, but very, very minor. But we can match colors across all the presses. We do quite regularly swap jobs around depending on workload on the actual machines. Yes, we've got some that are inkjet specific or HP specific, but there's also quite a few that we can swap between the presses if we've got a particular workload, if we need to turn the job round quick, if it's an emergency run or something like that, and you need to be pretty up on it, which, bearing in mind, we're dealing with printers all the time, so they would call us out fairly quickly if they weren't happy with it. So
guys, time is up. It was wonderful, and despite the few technical hiccups, we got to some presentation that didn't turn out 100%, but I think that we got into a very nice conversation, some very good questions from the audience, and I thank you both for being part of Learn with us, and I hope to meet you in real life at some point when the COVID-19 is hopefully over. So
excellent.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Platform, yes.
Thanks very much. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you.
That was fun. Yeah, great.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.